eminent and highly respected personality, Dr. William Hartley. Dr. Hartley will be discussing the topic integration. I'll just read you back. Dr. William Hartley is a lecturer with the University of Western Sydney and University College. He has served as a consultant to the United Nations and World Health Organization in Geneva on the Global Program on AIDS and Communicable Diseases. Dr. Hartley has worked with Professor Grant Farr for Portland State University and as adjunct professor with Professor Carvalho of the National Center for Migration Health Research and Development in Geneva on the issue relating to the Hazara people, and is writing a book with them, The Hazara of Afghanistan. His involvement with the Hazara community in Sydney spans 10 years, and he has been involved in advocating for individual Hazaras before the Refugee Review Tribunal and courts, and has also been involved in trying to establish the International Hazara Federation, an organization to unite local, state, national, and international Hazara groups. Please welcome Dr. Hartley.
Thank you very much, and good evening. One of the problems in being the last speaker is that the things that I wanted to say have often been covered by earlier speakers. And I was originally asked to talk about integration. And integration, I think, is difficult because sometimes that means assimilation. And assimilation means giving something up. And in fact, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is preservation. Preservation of the Hazara culture. So my focus really is about the Hazara people, specifically Hazara youth, and particularly Hazara youth in Australian universities, and what they have to do in order to bring this thing that we've been talking about, this integration of the Hazara community together. The second, of course, is about Australia, Australians, and indeed a wider educated or professional international community, particularly now in a globalised world community. So I suppose in a sense I'm going to talk about integration and about strategies of integration into the Australian community, but along with that is integration into the global community that we now have. The first point about the Hazara, well, we know that the Hazara are a noble and clever people of great dignity. And I think there should be absolutely no hesitation or dispute about the term Hazara. It is a term that reflects a long history of nobility, of suffering, and of persecution. Most Hazara, you speak at least 3 languages. You speak that of the country in which you've settled, Australia, or English, together with Hazaraki, Farsi, and quite possibly Pashtun. However, not all Hazaras are university educated or at university, and many work in industry or in manual work. Many overseas, or Hazaras overseas, suffer extremely long-term economic poverty and social and cultural marginalisation. And I believe that in Australia, the Hazara are in a unique position, and particularly the young Hazara are in a unique position to begin to address that. Here in Australia, with opportunities for social, intellectual and cultural development, and a level of personal freedom seldom found in other countries, young Hazaras can and should plan on becoming the leaders of their communities. And also for the Hazara who are scattered in diaspora. In order to do that, they have responsibilities. You have responsibilities. You have a responsibility to secure the highest educational opportunities that are available to you. You have a responsibility to provide and articulate information about Hazara culture, and indeed the serious troubles of the Hazara people in Afghanistan and in Pakistan to the wider Australian and international communities. You have a responsibility to assume positions of leadership in these communities, to be able to advocate and secure the interests of Hazaras in Australia, Afghanistan, and in the communities around the world. And you have a responsibility to preserve and disseminate Hazara history and culture. There are two distinct areas, or if you like, imperatives, things that must be done by Hazara youth. The first is ensuring that every educational and higher educational opportunity available is secured and exploited. So you have to find out what they are. And this is something I'll touch on a little later. I don't think you can do that unless there is a unified voice of the Hazara people. Second is in identifying and developing your unique talents and abilities in a way that contribute to and strengthen the bonds between the Australian community and the Hazara community in diaspora. For example, by becoming involved, actively involved in any organisation, whether it's government or private, that can in any way advance the interests and welfare of the Hazara people, and by promoting and disseminating positive information and data about the Hazara people. Because of your language abilities and your education, you, the young Hazara, are in a unique position to build very practical bridges between the Hazara and the Australian community. For example, in assisting the federal and state governments in interpreting and translating important documents, particularly those documents that concern other Hazaras or new arrival Hazaras, and by becoming proactive at all levels of community, state and federal governments, not waiting for opportunities to happen, but in fact creating opportunities. Of great importance is the fact that most of you have first-hand knowledge of the refugee issues that confront Hazaras, and will do so in the future with increasing urgency. You are in a position to make that valuable knowledge and experience available not only in a consultative but in a proactive manner. As young scholars, young Hazaras at the universities can clearly articulate the Hazara position and advocate appropriately. For example, most Australians are unaware of Hazara history, their status and their persecution in Afghanistan. As educated leaders, young Hazaras should be able to advocate for the Hazara people to take their rightful and prominent place in the diverse multicultural fabric of Australia, the Australian community, by securing a greater positive public profile. This means that you first have to organise yourselves. Many Hazaras have met in the past in an attempt to organise social and cultural organisations and associations for the Hazara people, and indeed many have had success. But my own observation is that they are not as inclusive as they could be. In fact, many groups formed in an attempt to unite the various Hazara groups, or in a way that diminishes historic backgrounds, tribal and geographic differences, have met or resulted with social or financial disaster. I believe this has happened because they become factional, exclusive, or simply lack the right focus to begin with. If they are to succeed, you must involve sympathetic and resourceful Australians, and you must trust them, particularly if they are professional and have a reputation for committed involvement with the Hazaras. My own personal experience in this area has shown me that it's extremely difficult. You could have an international Hazara federation with a trusted Hazara as the president, but with diverse community input and interests. This would get over this problem of the fragmentation that goes on within the Hazara community. This in turn would result in an effective and strong voice with government departments and with organisations.